close your eyes. Listen. That wind you hear isn't just air moving. It is the sound of absence. It is the echo of a memory the Earth has tried very hard to forget. We look at the world today, our cities, our farms, our national parks, and we assume this is the natural state of things. We think of nature as balanced, quiet, tamed. But that is a lie we tell ourselves to feel safe. The true story of Earth is not a story of stability. It is a story of giants, of monsters, of heat so intense it boiled the oceans, and of cold so deep it turned the planet into a snowball. For over 400 million years, life was louder, heavier, more terrifying. Tonight, we are going to ask a question that sits at the intersection of paleontology, geology, and astrophysics. A question that NASA scientists have actually modeled using data. What if prehistoric Earth was still alive today? What if the Silurian hypothesis was real?
Let's start with the hard truth. We are arrogant. We have been an industrial species for roughly 300 years. That sounds like a long time, but in geological time, it is a flicker, a sneeze. If you compress the entire 4.5 billion year history of Earth into a single calendar year, we humans, modern civilized humans, show up about 4 minutes before midnight on New Year's Eve. But here is the terrifying question posed by NASA's Gavin Schmidt and Adam Frank in their 2018 paper, The Silurian Hypothesis. What if we weren't first? What if deep in the Paleocene or the Eocene, another industrialized species rose, built cities, burned fuel, and then vanished entirely? Would we even know? The obvious answer is we would find their bones, their skyscrapers, their iPods. But geology is a violent, slow process of recycling. Schmidt and Frank point out that the oldest large area of undisturbed surface on Earth is the Negev Desert. It is only 1.8 million years old. Before that, ice sheets and tectonic plates have acted like a giant garbage disposal. Oceanic crust, it recycles every 200 million years. If a civilization existed during the time of the dinosaurs, its cities aren't buried underground. They have been literally pulled into the Earth's mantle, melted down to magma. And fossils? You might have seen museums full of dinosaurs, but those are the lottery winners. The fossil record is an impossibly thin slice of life. Schmidt and Frank estimate that the total sediment record from the age of the dinosaurs is only about 1% of the rock that was actually there. In other words, if an industrial civilization existed 50 million years ago, there might literally be nothing left to dig up.
But there is a but. If they burned fossil fuels like us, they would have left a ghost, a chemical fingerprint, anomalies in the isotopes of carbon and oxygen. And here is where the true story gets frightening. When Schmidt and Frank looked for these chemical ghosts in our actual geological record, they found them. Specifically, they found an event called the Paleocene-Eocene Thermal Maximum, the PETM. 56 million years ago, the Earth's temperature spiked by 5 to 8 degrees. The oceans acidified, mass extinctions hit the seafloor, and the carbon isotopes went haywire. For years, we blamed volcanoes, but the Silurian hypothesis forces us to ask a chilling question. What if that wasn't a volcano? What if that was the smokestack of a lost civilization? What if the reason the Eocene was so hot is because some ancient reptile was burning oil? Let's put aside the hypothetical reptile industrialists for a moment. Let's talk about the real prehistoric Earth. We think of the Ice Age as prehistoric. Woolly mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, we know them. But what if the Ice Age never came? What if the Pleistocene never happened, and we lived in a permanent greenhouse Earth? To understand understand this, we look to the early Cretaceous period, about 110 million years ago. New research from the University of Melbourne, led by Vera Kourasitis, has reconstructed the polar forests of that era. Today, the Arctic and Antarctic are frozen wastelands. But back then, during the age of the dinosaurs, they were rainforests. Picture this. You are standing in what is now southern Victoria, Australia, but you are inside the Antarctic Circle. The sun will disappear for months. It is pitch black, and yet towering conifers rise around you. Primitive ferns and mosses glow green under a sky that never fully brightens. In this world, dinosaurs like the small herbivorous ornithopods didn't migrate south for the winter. They lived there full time. They had massive eyes to see in the dark. They didn't hibernate, they grazed in the gloom. If the Earth had stayed this way, if the axial tilt didn't change, if the carbon dioxide level stayed in the thousands of parts per million, our human bodies would look very different. We would be shorter, stockier, built to retain heat in the cold dark, or pale and thin to shed heat in the humid heat. But the most shocking part of the Cretaceous world isn't the dark, it is the sound. In a world dominated by hadrosaurs, the duck-billed dinosaurs, the air wouldn't just be filled with roars, it would be filled with music. Paleontologists have discovered that the hollow crests of the Parasaurolophus act like giant resonant chambers. They didn't just honk, they produced deep, infrasonic rumbles that could travel for miles through dense forest. If that Earth was still alive today, you wouldn't hear birdsong when you woke up. You would hear the Earth humming. You would hear the bass line of giants calling to each other under a canopy of ferns the size of semi-trucks. It sounds like a fantasy, a paradise. But make no mistake, greenhouse Earth is hell. It is a hell of asphyxiation. The same pollen samples that show beautiful forests also show massive ocean anoxic events, where the water became so starved of oxygen that it literally turned toxic, killing everything that swam. It is a world of high stakes. Now, let's come closer to home, the recent past, the Pleistocene. This is the Earth we almost live on. It ended only about 11,700 years ago, a geological blink. If the Cretaceous was the age of reptiles, the Pleistocene was the age of mammals. And what mammals they were. We think of an elephant as a big animal, but in the Pleistocene, the elephant was the small one. Imagine driving down the Los Angeles freeway. You look to the left, and standing in the dry grass is a Columbian mammoth. Not a woolly mammoth. Those were the size of a pickup truck. The Columbian was a monster, weighing over 10 tons, with spiraling tusks that could punch through a car. Next to it, you see the American mastodon. And behind it, a ground sloth. Not a cute, slow tree dweller. The Megatherium was the size of a bull elephant. It had claws like bear traps, and it didn't climb trees, it ripped them out of the ground by the roots. North America used to be a Serengeti on steroids. We had glyptodons, armadillos the size of Volkswagens, with spiked tails like morning stars. We had castorides, beavers the size of black bears. And the predators? The American lion, Panthera atrox, was about 25% larger than an African lion. It hunted in prides across the plains. The short-faced bear, Arctodus simus, stood so tall on its hind legs that it could look a human in the eye if that human was standing on the roof of a single-story house. It didn't bother mauling you, it would simply wrap its jaws around your skull. And then there was Smilodon fatalis, the saber-toothed tiger. It wasn't a sprinter, it was an ambush predator built like a bulldog, with 7-inch knives for teeth, designed to slice through the throats of giant herbivores. But here is the true story. We live in the shadow of a tragedy, a silence that ecologists call defaunation. According to a study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, the extinction of these giants, the megafauna, was not a natural climate event. It happened right as humans arrived. In Europe, the loss of megafauna diversity reached nearly 71%. In South America, almost 80%. But the most haunting statistic comes from a 2024 study in global ecology and biogeography. They measured not just the number of animals lost, but the functional loss. The biomass of large herbivores in Europe has dropped by 94.5%. Let me say that again. The sheer weight of wild animals on the landscape is 95% less than it should be. If you walked through Yellowstone today, you think you are seeing nature, but you are walking through a ghost town. You are seeing the ruins of a cathedral. The pillars are broken. So we have a diagnosis. The earth is broken. It is quiet. It is empty. But what if we fixed it? There is a movement in conservation biology, controversial, radical, beautiful, called Pleistocene rewilding. The logic is brutal and simple. We killed the giants. It is our moral responsibility to bring them back. Or if we can't bring back the exact species, we import ecological proxies. There is a project in Siberia called Pleistocene Park. Scientists are reintroducing bison, horses, and musk oxen to the tundra. Their goal? To trample the moss, compact the snow, and restore the ancient mammoth steppe ecosystem. They argue that if you bring back the grazers, you stop the permafrost from melting. You fight climate change. But the American version of this is far stranger. Biologists like Josh Donlan have proposed rewilding the American Southwest. They want to introduce African cheetahs to the grasslands to hunt the pronghorn antelope. Why? Because the pronghorn is one of the fastest land animals on Earth. It evolved its incredible speed to outrun the American cheetah, which went extinct 12,000 years ago. The pronghorn is a race car with no race. They want to introduce wild camels, which evolved in North America before migrating to Asia. And most controversially, they want to introduce African elephants and lions to the Great Plains to stand in for the mammoths and the American lions. Imagine driving through Kansas. You look to the right. You see a pride of lions taking down a feral horse. You look to the left. A herd of elephants knocks over a line of trees. To some, this is madness. To proponents, this is simply paying back a debt. It is the Silurian hypothesis in reverse. Instead of wondering if giants existed before us, we are forcing giants to exist with us. But there is a catch, a terrifying catch. As one ecologist from the United States Forest Service warned, the outcomes may not be as simple as the expectation that returning the lost species will restore conditions to what they were. We might end up with novel ecosystems, alien worlds we cannot predict. We might create a Jurassic Park for real. And this time, the dinosaurs aren't coming back. Are they? Let's go back to the Silurian hypothesis. We have spent a lot of time imagining a world of Ice Age mammals or Cretaceous dinosaurs. But the true what if is much stranger. What if the prehistoric world was not just biologically different, but technologically different? Gavin Schmidt and Adam Frank stress that they do not actually believe in a lost civilization, but they admit the data is confusing. There are spikes in platinum and other isotopes in ice cores that date back 12,800 years ago, the Younger Dryas event. Some fringe theories suggest this was an airburst or a comet. But what if it was something else? We look for steel and plastic, but a civilization that lived 100 million years ago, before trees evolved to produce lignin, the stuff of wood, might have had a completely different technological pathway. We burn coal because it's easy. What if a civilization of sentient cephalopods or social insects found a way to build structures out of chitin and silicon that degrade into nothing looking like rock? The point of the Silurian hypothesis isn't to prove aliens or lizard people built the pyramids. The point is humility. We assume we are the masters of the planet because we have iPhones and rockets. But the rocks tell a different story. The rocks tell us that our reign is a decimal point on a very long timeline. If the Earth could survive the anoxia of the Cretaceous, the heat of the Eocene, and the ice of the Pleistocene, it will certainly survive us. But the disappearance of the megafauna, the silence of the giants, has taught us a terrible lesson about our own nature. We are a lonely species. We killed the competition. We burned the forests. And now we look around at the empty fields and we feel lonely.
So, what if prehistoric Earth was still alive today? The true story is that it is. The prehistory is not over. It is inside us. The Pleistocene scent of a predator still triggers our fight or flight response. The carboniferous air quality is what we are recreating in our atmosphere right now. We are living in the Anthropocene, a new geological age defined by us. But the fossil record of the future will not show our skyscrapers. It will show a layer of chicken bones from factory farming and a layer of plastic dust. If we want to see the what if, we just have to look at the rewilding projects. We have to listen to the rumbling of the bison being reintroduced to the prairies. We have to watch the wolves of Yellowstone reshaping the rivers. The giants are not gone. We just put them in cages, or we shrank them. The true story of Earth is one of resilience. It is the story of a planet that has weathered every storm we can imagine. But the question remains, as you turn off the lights tonight, are we the last civilization to rise on this planet? Or are we merely the latest? And if we vanish tomorrow, in a flash of war or a slow choke of heat, will the next intelligent species, millions of years from now, dig up our highways and think they were the lines of some giant beast? Or will they simply not find us at all? This is the deep time perspective. This is the true story of our prehistoric Earth. Sleep tight.